just in case.
Were there any shots fired at the officers?
No, he gave up without any problems.
Undersheriff, do we know what he was wearing? Did he have body armor or anything on, or normal clothes?
There's no indication he was wearing body armor, no.
Was he injured in the...
He's not injured, no.
And obviously no indication of how he got the gun in there yet.
We know, but I'm not going to say right now.
And no indication from other students of previous threats that you know of?
They're all being interviewed now, so I can't say. I'm sure that will come out later. Okay, folks, I'm sorry?
Any connection with the severed deer head that was found a few weeks ago?
I have no idea about that. I'm not familiar with that.
Thanks, Undersheriff.
Okay, we'll be back maybe around 5 o'clock. We'll give you more update around 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. All right, we'll look for you then.
All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oakland County Undersheriff Mike McCabe, unfortunately dashing the one piece of positive news that we were trying to cling to was that we had not heard that there were any fatalities that have occurred. He just informed us that 3 students have been killed in the shooting today, 6 others wounded. It's heartbreaking.
One of them a teacher.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. We were holding on hope that was not going to be the case, but when you hear that 3 students are, went to school as an innocent child to learn and are dead this afternoon, it's just unbelievable. We are learning more information about the gunman. They're not releasing the name, but we can tell you it was a 15-year-old boy. He was a sophomore, fired 15 to 20 shots. So, I mean, obviously, he was on a mission. We don't know if there was any other threat or anything like that said ahead of time. But the good news in this was that when that first 911 call was made at 12:51, police say a deputy that was actually assigned to the school was able to take part in taking him down.
And had him in custody within 5 minutes, and yet, I think we could read from what Mike McCabe was telling us there, reloaded somewhere in the middle of this with this semi-automatic handgun and ended up killing 3, wounding 6 others, including a teacher, and yet was taken into custody so quickly. But that was the kind of terror and havoc that he was able to wreak in just such a short period of time.
He did not shoot at police officers, and when they were able to get with him, in a sense, he did not put up a fight. So it was like he came there with his mission, he did what he did, and then just, and he, of course, was not injured, as many times is the situation.
And we unfortunately don't know anything about the motives or what was on his mind at the time. The undersheriff just telling us that so far he has been mum and wants to speak to an attorney before he continues at all with the interview with police, who, like so many of us, want to understand what was at the heart of what happened. Not that it will ever make this any kind of sense that would explain 3 deaths and 6 people fighting for their lives in the hospital, perhaps fighting for their lives. We hope we have no word on their conditions. We're told that come about 5 o'clock, so about another 2 hours from now, we'll have another briefing, at which time they will not only hopefully update us on those conditions and have names for us as well, but we're also told that's when they'll be announcing whatever plan there will be for Oxford High School for tomorrow as they try and move forward in this very, this is pioneer work. Nobody making the decisions right now has dealt with this kind of tragedy before at the school, and so they will have to be making a decision now about how they proceed, get the school, what they do with the school year. Obviously, we're going to need counselors to stand by because there are going to be a lot of students who are going to need a lot of help to get through this, and parents as well.
It's just uncharted territory. Paula Tutman was standing by live as this news conference was going on with Undersheriff Mike McCabe. I know there was a lot of questions being thrown out. Some horrific news this afternoon, Paula. 3 students have lost their lives.
Horrific. And one teacher, 3 students killed, 6 people injured, including a teacher, and that is absolutely horrific news. But let's go over those details again, just to encapsulate them. This thing happened in about 5 minutes. Within that time, police say that they received somewhere in the neighborhood of more than 100 911 calls. So people, students, and teachers were dialing in saying, hey, we've got a problem here. There is an on-site police liaison who apparently helped take this student in. We're talking about a 15-year-old with a semi-automatic pistol and several magazines. Now, we can deduce that from what Under Sheriff Mike McCabe said, because he said that if it is a pistol, well, first of all, think about a semi-automatic pistol and how many firing rounds you have in there. So that means that this student was actually able to reload that pistol and fire off quite a few shots. Chester, did you hear? Did he say somewhere around 15 shots or so? Do you remember the number of shots? I think he said, we've got several crews here, so we're going by different memories. So we think there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 shots, but that police liaison who's inside the school, that's what their job is. They were able to confront that student. The student apparently gave up without any issues or any challenges at all. So we're talking about an event that happened within 5 minutes. But let's think about, in that 5 minutes, 3 students are dead, 6 people are injured, including a teacher. We do know that that was a student, 15-year-old, who was a student at that time. Now, there's something going on that I hadn't heard before, but several of the reporters have been asking about, did this have anything to do with a severed deer head that was found at the school last week? And Under Sheriff McCabe said he didn't know. So they still don't know what a motive is. They do know how, by the way, the gun got into the school, but they're not saying right now. As I said earlier, this is a school that has a lot of safety procedures in place. There are only 2 ways in, when school opens and when school closes. But at 7:45, once classes start, that door 17 shuts, door number 1 stays open, and you have to be buzzed in. And so this is a student who apparently got into the school with a gun. These students have ALICE training. They have doors that lock on the interior. It is a vast complex, and teachers are able to communicate with one another. And when they detect or find out where the danger is, they're able to move students out, and then those students can be brought here or are brought here to this predetermined spot. It's the Meyer parking lot. The school is actually, I don't know if you can see up there, Justin, but the school is actually up the hill. But the teachers were able to get the students out to this predetermined safety spot for reunification with parents. And so we've been watching a line of parents trying to get into the Meyer parking lot. But it doesn't look like the line is as long. And so, you know what, it's hard to tell. There's a lot going on, so I can't say whether or not all parents have been unified with students. I got the sense that the parents whose students were killed in this have been notified, but I do want to be clear that I am not completely clear on that. Again, they know who the student is, but they still have to interview other students, go through social media, do an investigation, so they can try to find out what precipitated this, whether or not there was a motive or what the motive was. But here is the thing that we have to take away. There are 3 students that are dead, and there are students who saw and heard this. And this is a community that is going to be hurting, rightfully so, and grieving. 6 people injured, and we don't know the extent of those injuries. But this is an horrific thing to happen to a school. Most schools are prepared to some degree with safety procedures. When people say, I didn't think it could happen here, well, we all know it can happen everywhere, or schools wouldn't prepare. The only thing that this school did not have in place, they did not have metal detectors, and they did not have bag checks. We're talking about a school with 1,700 students. Bag checks would take a great deal of time. When I asked the superintendent why they didn't have, or I said, did you have metal detectors? He said no. Can you tell me why? He said no. No other answer other than that. But I have to think that school districts will have to rethink that.
I know you were talking with parents or a parent earlier. I wanted to share that sound if we can. Can you set up this interview for us, Paula, who you spoke with?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So when I got on site, I saw a parent in her vehicle. Her face was in her hands. She was shaking to the core. Her belief was that her daughter had not gone to school that day. She was actually across the street getting a massage. And when she heard about this, she wasn't sure if her child had gone to school. And so this is a portion of that conversation.
I'm just so emotional because you never think it's going to happen here. And the kids just are all a big part of this community. And I'm so scared for them. And my daughter is safe, but I don't know if all of her friends are safe, and I don't know if my nieces and nephews are safe. So, but I think they are. I'm getting information, so I think they're doing okay. But these parents are just, they're going through hell, and I can't even imagine it if they don't know where their kids are.
What did Lily tell you?
That there was some shots fired, and that she was very scared for her friends. My daughter happened to be home today, which I feel kind of bad because I said kind of suck it up, but I can't. I'm just so happy she was home.
What brings you here then if your daughter's already home? You said nieces, nephews?
Yes. I actually work in this building, and I was in a massage because I'm a massage therapist, and I was in a massage when the news came out, and I didn't know if my daughter was okay.
This is what's happening right now. Parents are trying to figure out whether or not their kids' friends are safe, whether or not relatives are safe. And remember, we're not just talking about students here. We're talking about faculty. We're talking about teachers. We're talking about staffers. And so what's happening right now is this network of students and parents are trying to figure out who's who. Again, the names of the 3 deceased students have not been released. The names of the injured have not been released. But certainly we ache, even as reporters, we ache for these parents and for this community to go through this. In 5 minutes, 3 young lives are lost. 6 people are injured, including a teacher. And this is an horrific event to cover. No matter how you look at it, guys.
Yeah, Paula, we were mentioning that the one good piece of news we had that we were clinging to heading into that briefing was that we had not heard that any of these had become fatalities, and yet now we know 3 lives have ended today, thousands have been changed forever, and when he made that announcement, it just felt like being punched in the stomach. Awful.
Well, for sure. So as reporters, we all have sources. We're all working our sources. And indeed, even on my way here, I had heard that there was at least 1 fatality, possibly 3. But we can't confirm that until police confirm that.
Yeah. And in fact, that's the other thing I want to point out, because I thought that was really interesting. You noted it earlier when Mike McCabe said they know how the gun got into the school, but they weren't prepared to share that yet. There will be a number of pieces of information, and this is just sort of par for the course on anything that, even though they feel like they have all of the information, they have their suspect, they don't believe that person to be a suspect, they believe that person to be the gunman. They have all that in front of them and at hand. However, the case will eventually still have to be prosecuted, and they have to hang on to certain pieces of evidence and certain pieces of knowledge about the case that will be a part of that eventual prosecution.
It's such a convoluted way because you have to gather every single thing, and like Mike McCabe said, we can't release this information right now because what you can expect is right now not only are they going through social media, they're going to the gunman's home, they are going through their house, they're looking for anything on the computer, on the laptop. If there's any other victims, they're tracking down the parents, they're tracking down any siblings. They have to find out if there's any
whatever friends at the school. There's a lot of police work still ahead here.
Yeah, there is a lot of. In the meantime, it's my phone's just going crazy because I have so many friends who have friends who have children, or they have a niece. I've got a friend who is texting, and I don't want to give the identity or anything of some of these young people who have seen things, but they said I was in the hallway, I saw, and now I'm scared. One of my friends is dead. How do you? And she's sitting there right now with her mother just bawling and crying, and we're waiting till 5 o'clock so we can find out these names, and they just don't know if their friend survived. It's just...
When bad things happen at schools, we talk about it all the time. We say that counselors will be made available, and that's on all manner of different things that sometimes happen at school, and we can sometimes just run right by that little nugget of information that counselors will be available. This is going to be a massive lift to try and help these students and their parents and siblings and family members deal with this massive trauma that has been inflicted on their hearts and minds today.
And we have to remind each other, these are children still.
Yeah.
I mean, heaven forbid an adult goes
a child
through
who's
this.
in custody, 15 years old.
I mean, they don't have the brain capacity yet to deal and to understand. And we're looking at another stretcher going, and I'm not sure if this is video or live. I think it is.
I think we're back to video.
I think we're back to video, yeah.
But if you are just joining us, it's now getting close to 3:30. It was about just a little bit before 1 o'clock that all of this first developed at Oxford High School, and it took us a while to get our first, almost 2 hours to get our first briefing from the Undersheriff of Oakland County. But here was the announcements that Mike McCabe made just a short time ago.
Around 12:51 today, we received a 911 call of an active shooter at the high school. Deputies immediately responded, and we received over 100 911 calls into our dispatch center, over 100. The deputies took a suspect into custody within 5 minutes of the original 911 call. They recovered a handgun from the suspect. The suspect fired multiple shots. There's multiple victims. It's unfortunate that I have to report that we have 3 deceased victims right now who are all believed to be students. We have 6 others that were shot. 1 was a school teacher. They're all at local hospitals being treated for various injuries. Again, multiple shots were fired. He did not give us any resistance when he was taken into custody. He's currently being transported back to Pontiac for potential, he's already invoked his right to not speak. So he wants an attorney. He's not telling us anything at this point in time.
Undersheriff of Oakland County Mike McCabe with really our first fuller briefing on exactly what happened this afternoon. We still have obviously a ton of questions which we hope will be addressed here coming up about another hour and a half from now, as we expect another briefing to come along at about 5 o'clock. But that response, 100 911 calls coming in, and we heard John Lyman, who's with the fire department in Rochester Hills, talking about how they had 60 units responding because they had no grasp of how big or how awful this might be.
And in situations like this, one of your questions is are there multiple people? Is there a plan? Are there multiple guns? What are the threats? We need to assess it quickly. And from what we understand, as Mike McCabe said, this gunman acted alone. Let's listen more.
We believe he acted alone. There's no other shooters. There's no other gunmen. We don't believe anybody at this point in time, pending further investigation, that he planned this with anybody else. But we will be doing social media checks. We will be talking to all the students, as many as we can that were here today. That's why we have so many officers here and so many detectives here, so that everybody and anybody can be talked to that has any knowledge of him or what he was going to do, or after the fact.
So the focus is spread out right now all over the place around Oxford. You've still got a lot of people at the high school, the investigation that goes on there. You've got all of the staging area that's going on at the Meyer, just north of the school, where parents are trying to be reunited for the first time with their children. And you also have a scene at the hospital in Pontiac, although they said a number of different hospitals. So I'm not sure that that's where all 6 of the shooting victims were taken, but at least some we do know.
Yeah, we did hear the sirens. Hank Winchester's live outside of McLaren Hospital in downtown Pontiac. I know that hospital was on lockdown a bit ago. Give us the very latest, Hank.
Karen, Devin, good afternoon to both of you. Yes, the hospital, we are being told, remains on lockdown. In fact, we've been seeing it play out all day. People here for medical appointments making their way to the main entrance, being turned away by a guard inside because of the situation that is playing out. And we are being told that some of the victims from the high school were brought here, it being the closest hospital to the high school itself. Now, we also heard from McCabe, the undersheriff in Oakland County, talking about the investigation. Obviously, the team in place there at the high school, going classroom to classroom, working to talk with witnesses, figuring things out. But here at the hospital, an investigation also underway. In fact, take a live look behind me. You can see a few of the vehicles from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. There were 3 SUVs here, 2 now that we have in sight. We also saw about an hour ago an agent with the FBI. He was wearing clothing, identifying himself as an agent, making his way here to the emergency trauma entrance of the hospital. You see outside here there are a few guards. You see the dog. They have been working to restrict access into the hospital itself. And just a short time ago, and we're going to respect their privacy, we did see a group of people arrive here at the hospital. They are still outside, but they were hugging one another. They were all looking at their cell phones, possibly working to get information, maybe maybe if they have a loved one here, or it could be a situation where they were trying to visit somebody who was already here at the hospital, not being allowed in right now because of the ongoing lockdown situation. We're working to get more information from the hospital itself, from McLaren, Oakland, Pontiac, about how they're handling this situation moving forward right now. If you have an appointment here, if you have a loved one here, right now they're restricting access to the building itself, not only to the main hospital here across the street from the emergency trauma entrance, but also on the back side of the building too. But you know, the main thing here is investigators not only having to work that scene, that active situation that played out at the high school with FBI, the Sheriff's Department, Michigan State Police there, but clearly here now the investigation is turning to the possible victims who may be here. The Oakland County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, they have their teams inside right now working to find out from possible victims what was playing out, what was going on in that high school when this all developed just before 1 o'clock this afternoon. That is why we see investigators here right now. That is why you see the investigators in the high school. They are working to put the pieces of this puzzle together. What happened earlier today? Why did it happen? What information can they get from those who witnessed this attack? And this hospital being the closest one to the high school, obviously a close point to take those who were dealing with an emergency situation. We did see some ambulances about an hour ago around the back side of the building, which is the emergency drop-off, make their way back behind the building. You know, lights were on, sirens. One was escorted by a police cruiser. And then here you see, and you can see more activity now with different members of law enforcement, the security team here from the hospital, not only working to make sure that members of the general public don't make their way inside, but obviously working the investigation inside this building and trying to get information from those who were directly impacted by these tragic events today. Devin, Karen, that's kind of the visual scene here from the hospital. Again, we're working to get more information from a hospital spokesperson regarding the lockdown. If you yourself have a family member here or you have a medical appointment here at the hospital either today or tomorrow, we're going to try to get information about how that could affect you and your family members moving forward.
You bet, Hank. The idea of a hospital remaining on lockdown might seem unnecessary to some, but there are a lot of things that law enforcement and hospital authorities have to keep considering here, and that is, even though Under Sheriff McCabe says it was a lone gunman who acted by himself and they have that person in custody, they have to worry about copycats. They have to worry about people who might try to take advantage of this situation, which is one of the mind-numbingly stupid things about human behavior, that somebody would see opportunity in all of this grief and despair that others are feeling, but that's the reality. So the hospital right now remaining on lockdown. And
that's also the reason why the other schools in the Oxford School District were on lockdown, because they just didn't want any other attention or anything going on there, but they're letting parents pick them up. Meantime, parents are rushing as much as they can to that Meyer to pick their children up over at the Garden Center. The Meyer's is north of the school. Jason Colthorpe is there. I know you've been talking with parents. Jason, give us the very latest. As we see people in
Yeah, this is actually Trayshawn and his mom, Robin Redding, who Trayshawn actually didn't go to school today. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him. He was actually just briefing police on what is believed to be kind of the threat that was leading up to this. Trayshawn, just a second, I'm going to start with your mom. Walk me through what this was like as a parent and explain. Trayshawn didn't go to school today because of a perceived threat, correct?
Well, he didn't go to school today because he was just not feeling comfortable with going to school. He had a conscience of saying, like, I don't want to go to school today, Mom. Can I just do it online? So I just said, okay, yeah. But then before him saying that, he said, Mom, none of the rest of the kids is going today. And I said, why? The rest of them not going? And he said, no. So I said, okay. He said he wasn't answering because all of them always say, I'm ready, I'm up, I'm getting on the bus, or meet me here, that nature, and that wasn't happening today.
And why was that? Was there an uneasy feeling about the kids?
Yeah, he was that was just an uneasy feeling that he had and didn't want to go.
I just got like a little feeling that, like, when I got up today, like, I text me and my little cousins, because I'm a senior, like, they're like a little bit younger than me, so I text them and I was like, is anybody up? Who's going to school? Like, get up, let's go. We're going to school. No one responded, so I'm like, man, this is weird. Like, we never do this. Like, either like somebody's sick or like something's wrong. So I'm like,
what was worrying everybody? There had been some ominous threats posted in recent days. Is that right?
yeah, that is right. That it is. I've been hearing the threats too, and it's like, you know, kids, they play around and say, oh, we're gonna shoot up the school or this. You don't supposed to play around with that.
Right.
Like, this is serious. You can't do that. So I mean, like, it's a lot of stuff that's been going on. You know, this school, it's been tragic, and it's like, I don't even know. It's just.
When you heard about what was going on at school today, you weren't there, but then you learned there's an active shooter. What was going through your mind?
My first thing when I got up, I put my shoes on, put my coat on, I told my mom, come on, let's go. I have a friend, he's more like my cousin. I think of him as my cousin. And I said, he's in there. He's the only one that went to school. And I need to get up there to get him out of that school because I don't want anything to happen to him.
And he is okay?
Yeah, he is fine. He's at home. He's a little bit scared, but he'll be okay. This has been crazy.
Now, the threats that we've been talking about, I was just talking to the undersheriff again about that. They're looking into these threats. There was something posted about a deer head. Tell me about that.
That happened probably like a month ago, which is like somebody cut off a deer head, his neck, about like right on his neck.
An actual deer head.
The actual deer head, blood and everything, and threw it in our courtyard in our school. Which you have to get inside the school to get in that courtyard, and it's outside. And they like drew all on the buildings on the wall looking for our principal. They want to talk to our principal, ask him where he is. I mean, it's a lot to this. I mean, I don't have all the details, but
and they're still investigating. I think it's confirmed if it's connected to this sophomore who pulled the trigger today. And as you guys got here, you saw a couple of the students come out, and I don't want you to name any names because they're still notifying people, but how is that hitting you, knowing that you know some of these kids that were shot today?
I mean, it worries me a lot. I mean, I grew up with these kids for so long. I've been going out here for almost like 4 or 5 years now. And I know of these kids that they're hurt and they're sad and their parents don't know what to do, but it's gonna be okay. God will heal everybody. Everybody will be fine.
We're certainly glad you're okay. And Robin, from a parent's standpoint, talk to me about safety. Do you feel safe letting Trayshawn go back to school here?
No, I do not, because they haven't got this under control. If all these things are already happening, you never know what might happen again. And I'm not finna risk my child being able to get hurt. So I would prefer just to have him online. I'm not sending him back to the school. There's nothing that nobody can say, oh, you going to school. Oh, it's over. You don't know. You can't predict anything for that to happen. So no, I'd rather for him to go online. My condolence goes out to the family and the staffs and all the, the kids that were injured into this and all the trauma ties and things that can cause all those students and staff.
And I've seen a lot of parents today, and they are definitely in a state of shock.
Yes.
Is it that way for you too?
Yes, it is. That's why I was up here like, I can't. I mean, if no one else is gonna let their voice be heard, then mine is gonna be heard. Yeah. You got to be able to get these kids under control. They have to. They have to get this whole thing under control. Security is a must. You can't say it won't happen. This can happen anywhere. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sending my kid back to no school that he can't even sit down and get a lesson to know that I'm gonna get a phone call and say my child been shot or it's a shooting. No, that's devastating. It's crazy.
I can only imagine you must have been thanking God that your son did not go to school.
Yes, I was praying all the way, thanking God, a blessing. Hey, you gotta listen to your kids, and he was very firm of saying, I'm not going. Yeah. So.
Robin, we're glad he's okay, and thank you both for talking to us.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it. And Devin and Karen, by the way, the undersheriff had just told me a minute ago that we're expecting another briefing coming up at 5 o'clock. It's we still got a long way to go before that, but as they actively investigate some of this, I can tell you that we're across the street from Meyer, where the original staging area was, but there's been all kinds of overflow. And families have come across here, and Homeland Security has reached out to a bike shop over here that just has a lot of property that, and they're able to house some kids there if they need to. So it's become a staging area over here. And in talking to some parents over there, I can tell you a few of them were waiting word on their loved ones to find out if their kids were okay. And it's just a scene, straight out of every parent's nightmare as they try and wait for that. So we're waiting. We're waiting for an update, and we will update you as soon as we get that. But for now, I'll send it back to you in the studio.
Jason, I want to say, before you went to that interview, I saw that student just hugging one of it appeared to be a police officer. Was that the case? Tell me a little bit more about that.
He was the first one over here that had brought to their attention that there had been other threats in recent days, and going back a month ago to the Deer Head situation he was talking about, where someone posted it. And when we talked to her earlier, by the way, she said the threat that really spurred her son and some friends to not go to school was much more explicit. It included the words saying, if you come to school today, but they weren't sure who it was directed at. If you come to school today, you will get shot. So there was an explicit threat out there, and officers learned of it. This is a very fluid situation for police as well. And they brought him over to try and debrief him, and they were talking to him for a long time. And you can just, the connection, the emotion there, like you saw, Karen, once he got out of the vehicle, gave him a hug. I mean, it's a lot of hugs going around today.
No doubt.
Sure.
Definitely needed, very much needed. We'll let you go continue to work this story and talk with some of the parents and some of the students, Jason, as we kind of decipher through all of this. We don't want to share rumors, but we did have that Deer threat in the email.
I want to get back to this. This goes back to November 4th, so not quite a month ago, but almost. An email or a letter went out from the principal of Oxford High School, that's Steve Wolf, explaining what I think at the time and to him felt more like vandalism than a threat. And he was careful in the letter that he sent. I guess I'll go ahead and read it. It's now of public record. Good morning, OHS parents. I wanted to send out this message to clarify some of the rumors that have started this morning. Again, November 4th. There is no present threat of danger at Oxford High School. Before school began this morning, we identified graffiti on the cement outside our pool entrance doors. We immediately notified security in the Oakland County Sheriff's Office and our custodial staff. This vandalism was created by an individual with red acrylic paint very early this morning and did not contain any threats or any concerning messages. This same individual also climbed on top of the school building and painted several windows with the same red acrylic paint. None of the paint on the roof indicated a threat to our building. Security personnel reviewed camera footage and confirmed this person did not gain access into the building as OHS is locked and secure. Unfortunately, this person did throw, and this was the part that Karen and Jason just referenced, did throw the head of a deer into a locked, inaccessible courtyard while on the roof. The deer was from a nearby location off campus, likely struck from a vehicle prior to today. There was no blood from the animal found on campus or on the roof, as earlier reported on social media. With the help from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, we did identify and locate the suspect. At this time, this is a police investigation, and we can assure our students, staff, and parents the suspect is not a threat to our building. Again, that from about a month ago. We have no... Please do not necessarily take any linkage from what happened then to what happened today, because we can't confirm that at all. But that does speak to the worries that the student that Jason just spoke to, Trayshawn, who was talking about whatever this sort of vibe and climate has been in the school that kept him and many others apparently from wanting to be at school today.
Right, and when I was speaking with one of my friends who's an uncle of one of the children who was there, they had expressed too, they said there was a negative vibe, some concern of something that went on last week. They weren't feeling comfortable, but not enough to, they just said there was something going on. There was an uncomfortable vibe. Of course, you know.
Trayshawn said there have been threats posted somewhere. He didn't mention which social media site. We haven't. I'm not exactly certain to what those referred to, but clearly it was enough for he and a lot of his closest friends and family members to stay away from school today.
Which is a strange decision to make out of the blue. If you're just saying, hey, I've decided today on a Tuesday in December I'm not going and my friends are not going, and the mom says, okay, you can do online.
Well, in fact, it is a decision you can make today because of the way that learning has had to adapt to the pandemic. We do have students who have the opportunity and the option of staying home and learning virtually. So it's not the same as skipping school, but that's a glaring moment. This is from earlier today as the SWAT team arrived at Oxford High School. Again, the call went out about 12:51, according to the undersheriff. 12:51, they received the first 911 call along with more than 100 others. And within 5 minutes, it was all over. They had taken a 15-year-old sophomore into custody who had with him a semi-automatic handgun. The undersheriff suggesting that sometime during those 5 minutes, he was able to unload enough shots and reload, apparently, to kill 3 people, wound 6 others, including 1 teacher. We believe the 3 who were killed are students of Oxford High, though that is not quite. The undersheriff told us he is working on confirming those facts for us, and they're hoping that here on the next briefing, about an hour and 15 minutes from now, we will know a little bit more about who these people are, whose lives have been lost in this horrendous spray of violence.
And you do have to give, this is file video that we had shot earlier this afternoon with some of the medical choppers arriving, and you do have to give credit to the emergency services department that responded, local agencies, state agencies, the FBI, et cetera. Everyone rushed to that school. There was an echo of sirens and cars just barreling down the street to trying to get there because police were able to get that gunman within 5 minutes. One of the deputies that is assigned to the school was able to help with another officer to get that individual. The individual did not fire back. In a sense, I don't want to use the word gave up, but had done his harm, had done his deadly deed, and then just stopped. They were able to take him into custody and take that weapon. And because of that quick response, then emergency services were able to descend so very quickly. We've got video there. That's one of the Michigan State Police crime vans that were there, and that Circle Drive just loaded with ambulances and fire trucks, and you could see the other emergency crews and police services vehicles. You can see the brake lights. They just tore into that grass section, just braking, jumping out and running to save these kids. We did learn from Paula Tutman the way their system works with this school, because this school's big. I mean, it's spread out.
1,700 students.
Yeah, they were able to unlock certain doors once they knew it was safe to get those kids out. And you know, kudos to their practices, kudos to the ability for those teachers to remain calm and to keep the children safe that were able to stay safe. Other children just simply ran out of the door when they were in the hallway. And we do hear that the first shots did happen in a hallway with that 15-year-old sophomore.
And then somewhere in the course of things, a bathroom as well, apparently. But we know very little about what that student had in mind. Under Sheriff McCabe telling us that he has said almost nothing to investigators, and in fact has demanded an attorney. I don't know if he had said anything at all that might explain his reasoning for what he did today, that necessarily that would be shared with us at this point yet, because this investigation, again, is in its very early stages. We are still just about, we're less than 3 hours into this horrible day at Oxford High School.
And as you had said, Okay, we're going to go back to an interview that Paula Tutman did with a mom, and to set this up, this mom was near the school and she had let her child stay home, from what we understand, but still hearing this news,
I think any parent, you don't have to be a parent, any of us can identify with the kind of worry that you will hear in her voice.
I'm just so emotional because you never think it's going to happen here, and the kids just are all a big part of this community, and I'm so scared for them. And my daughter is safe, but I don't know if all of her friends are safe, and I don't know if my nieces and nephews are safe. So, but I think they are. I'm getting information, so I think they're doing okay. But these parents are just, they're going through hell, and I can't even imagine it if they don't know where their kids are.
What did Lily tell you?
that there was some shots fired and that she was very scared for her friends. My daughter happened to be home today, which I feel kind of bad because I said kind of suck it up, but I can't. I'm just so happy she was home.
What brings you here then if your daughter's already home? You said nieces, nephews?
Yes. I actually work in this building, and I was in a massage because I'm a massage therapist, and I was in a massage when the news came out, and I didn't know if my daughter was okay.
Really impossible not to identify with that, and I think the sentiments she's sharing there were felt thousands of times today by so many others who knew that they had loved ones in the school.
Yeah. Rod Maloney had a good friend, and his special needs child was in that school, and somehow he was able to at least communicate via text. But some of these kids, you know, we said they were running to the mire, but some of these kids just ran through the woods and wound up in this middle of an intersection by themselves in the cold and snow, and thank goodness they were able to find them and get them to safety. But it's those moments that you're, like we had talked about, you hear that gunshot and you're running for your life and you don't know what in the world is going on.
I just had an email from someone saying that we've mentioned Alice training a couple of times, and you've heard police talk about that. You'll hear that here perhaps over the next couple of days, and that it might be helpful to mention. Alice training is the protocols that a lot of schools have adopted on exactly how they should respond if there is an active shooter situation. It deals with the way teachers are supposed to behave, with the way security personnel at the school is supposed to behave, and the way students are supposed to respond when they receive those first alerts. Alice training was apparently in use today at Oxford High.
Yeah, a lot of schools, obviously, they practice, but you know.
Like we said, horrible thing to have to be prepared for. It makes those crazy nuclear drills that we used to go through back in my day, they seem kind of quaint in comparison to worrying about a gunman roaming the halls. But that was the situation today.
Like a fire or something like that.
Sure.
At least you can see the fire, you kind of know where it's going, and you can get out in a sense. I don't want to say it's better or worse, but with a gunman, you don't know what's next. You don't know if someone's down the hall. And it's such an unpredictable environment that you have no practice with, and it's just, you don't know how to
That's what you and I were talking about earlier. You can try and prepare for everything, all kinds of scenarios and conditions that might exist. You can't really prepare yourself for the terror of it, for the way that you respond emotionally when you start hearing a gunshot down the hall. And that's teachers, parents, and students alike, of course. And also whoever is the gunman has no idea how he's going to respond to that moment, or gunmen. But in this case, it was just one 15-year-old sophomore student who is in custody. But again, the lockdown remains in effect at a number of locations. That includes McLaren Hospital, where at least some of these students who were wounded were taken.
Your heart has to go out to those families and the friends and the students who now are literally sitting at home. Let's say they were able to get to their parent and get safe. You know, they're wondering, did their friend make it? They're wondering if their teacher is okay. And we're just sitting here on pins and needles waiting for another hour, hopefully, to get a little bit more information. But it's frightening. In some of these messages we've gotten from the school, they said, you know, if you text your child and they don't respond, please call this number. And I just can't imagine having to be that person to have to call that number.
Horrendous. We do have this sort of weird scenario that's hanging out over top of all this from the interview that we just heard with Jason Colthorpe, that there has been a lot of unease at Oxford High School in recent days, and that some students just did not feel comfortable or safe going to school today. And we have no idea if what they were worried about is exactly what played out today. But of course, Occam's razor would be that sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. We'll see where that leads, and perhaps police can brief us a little bit later here. If you're just joining us, we expect our next briefing on what's happened today at Oxford High School a little more than an hour from now, coming up at about 5 o'clock. You'll see that live, of course, when it happens. In the meantime, we've got our reporters spread out all over town. At the hospital, at the Mire, where all the parents have been waiting to try to be reunited with their students, and of course at the school as well.
Meantime, the governor just released a statement in reference to the shooting in Oxford, and I will read this for you. My heart breaks for the students, teachers, staff, and families of Oxford High School. The death of multiple students and the shooting of many others, including a teacher, is horrific. I want to thank the first responders on the ground working hard to keep people safe as law enforcement officials investigate this shooting and get the community the help it needs right now. As Michiganders, we have a responsibility to do everything we can to protect each other from gun violence. No one should be afraid to go to school, work, a house of worship, or even their own home. Gun violence is a public health crisis that claims lives every day. We have the tools to reduce gun violence in Michigan. This is a time for us to come together, help our children feel safe at school. And she ends with, my heart is with the parents who had their children taken from them today and with the entire community in Oxford.
Yeah. And that is, if you are following social media this afternoon, there are tons of prayers being said for the folks in Oxford right now. Hopefully that's a comfort to those of you who were very personally connected to what's happened today. We are now, we're getting close here to the 4 o'clock hour, so our reporters are preparing as we'll get underway with First at 4 in our regular newscast this afternoon, but there will be nothing regular, of course, about today. We are awaiting a news conference again coming up at 5 o'clock. The last one was heartbreaking as we learned that 3 people have been killed. We still have 6 others who were wounded, and of course,
we don't know the seriousness of those.
It could be that the death toll ends up climbing higher. We certainly hope not, and we are all saying prayers for those 6 as well.
Most definitely. What we're learning from some of the witnesses, and when we say that, we're talking about students who have perhaps communicated to their parent who has shared us some information from what we understand, and this is early because police didn't confirm exactly what happened, but it was right around that 1 o'clock hour. 12:51 is when they got that first call that there was an individual with a gun. From what we understand, that 15-year-old sophomore was in a hallway and started opening fire. We had one witness say that their friend was shot in the face. Took the time to reload 15 to 20 shots at least. And in the end, as you said, within that 5 minutes was able to kill 3 people, injure 6 others, including a teacher. And in that 5 minutes, Oakland County Sheriff's deputies were able to respond and descend. One of the deputies that's actually assigned to the school with another officer was able to apprehend that 15-year-old. And now the question is, who is that 15-year-old? What led that individual to bring a gun to school? What's the history? There are rumors flying of possible concerns from last week, concerns from 3 weeks ago, students who had just willingly woke up today saying, I don't feel like I should go to school. So there's some questions on why they had those feelings. When Paula asked, for security measures for the superintendent there, they didn't want to go into detail right now. And we do understand that on the very first, within minutes and hours of something like this. But it is important to note, there were no metal detectors, there were no bag checks for the 1,700 students. And there's a question of how this could happen when perhaps we knew there might have been something brewing. And we're hoping in the next hour to learn a little bit more about really the environment of that school.
And there is, of course, a family in the education community. Other schools are watching what's happened. No doubt they all feel there, but for the grace of God. Heartland Schools just tweeted out, our hearts go out to the Oxford community. The other part I wanted to share, please remind your children, and this would be all schools, to report to our staff any concerns that need to be checked out. If you see something or hear something, say something. And it certainly feels like from what we were hearing from Trayshawn, who talked with our Jason Colthorpe a while ago, he was feeling something. How much of it? Woke up and didn't feel like going to school today. Had a lot of friends who felt the same way. We don't really have a fuller explanation, understanding about the threats that he referred to. He said that there had been threats showing up online. Hyperbole, of course, is almost another varsity sport at most high schools. And a lot of talk can get out of hand and run around. You don't know exactly what some people are wanting to take seriously, what they feel like they need to, report, and what they feel like they need to keep to themselves because maybe it involves a friend. We have much still here that we need to learn, but this is troublesome. That there was this sort of air of uncertainty, and as he said, ominous. It was there was an ominous sort of feeling in the air at Oxford High over these last couple of days.
The story has continued to develop. We have crews in all all different areas. We have Hank
Yep.
Winchester at McLaren Hospital in downtown Pontiac. Jason Colthorpe is talking to parents who have been waiting in that half-mile stretch to get to Meyer to pick up their child. We also have Paula Tutman, who is talking with police and authorities there in terms of the investigation, the gunman, and we're waiting to learn more about the victims. So we are going to regroup, and First at 4 will be started.
Yeah, we will try and codify all of this, break it down for you in the pieces in the way that it's all happened here. Let's do that now as Local 4 News First at 4 begins.
Local 4 News starts now with a breaking news alert.
Good afternoon. At 4 o'clock, breaking news. We've been covering a shooting at Oxford High School. There are a handful of victims. 3 people believed to be students are dead. 6 others are injured. Our coverage continues now. First at 4. And during the shock and horror of the shooting, students were rushed to a Meyer store near the school.
That's where the Sheriff's Department gave us an update about an hour ago. Our Paula Tutman was there asking some of the questions, and she's got an update now on the latest. Paula.
You know what, Devin, you said the perfect word, and that is to codify all of this. It's very difficult to do. There are a lot of moving parts right now, but this is what we do know based on what the undersheriff reported. We have 3 students who are dead, 6 people injured, including a school teacher. They've been taken to various hospitals. This all went down in a matter of about 5 minutes. There is an on-site police liaison who actually helped arrest the 15-year-old student who came into this school with a loaded automatic handgun, and based on the number of shots, we're hearing 15 to 20, apparently had additional magazines. And so the way the school is laid out, this is, I believe, one of the largest, if not the largest, single-level high schools that is that broad. We're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 56 classes. They've got very stringent safety precautions. 2 ways in when school opens, 2 ways out when school closes, but at 7:45, the door 17 closes. There's only 1 door you can get in, and you have to be buzzed in. But what they don't have is they do not have metal detectors, and they do not do bag checks, even though they actually limit the size of bag. You can't bring in a backpack, but they limit the size of bags that can come in. Now, the teachers are also able to lock the doors from the inside. We believe this happened in an education area called Area D, I believe it's called, and that's based on the shape. But what we're understanding is that teachers are able to lock the doors from the inside, communicate with one another, and as soon as it's safe, they're actually able to get students out of the building. So Justin, just kind of go with me so I can give folks an idea. So this is Lapeer. There's the school right up there on the hill. So that's the hill right there. And then those students who are able to evacuate from the school actually come to this Meyer. And I know you've been talking about that this is a reunification stop where parents are able to actually pick up their children. And the undersheriff actually said the school did a phenomenal job in getting the kids safely out of that school and out of future harm's way before they realized that the gunman had actually been taken into custody.
There was an orderly evacuation. The school did everything right. Everybody remained in place. They barricaded themselves, and Tim here has done a great job in terms of preparing. You never want to prepare for something like this, but you have to. And the school district's done a wonderful job preparing. All the doors over there are marked at the high school. If you've seen them, deputies responded. They knew where to go. We've had assistance from other police agencies nearby.
Okay, so indeed, we have a 15-year-old who is in custody right now. He's lawyered up, said he doesn't want to talk anymore. But this does not stop the investigation. And so what has to happen now, you have lots of agencies who are now involved in this, including the FBI. They've got to comb through social media. They've got to talk to this student's family. They've got to talk to friends or associates or people who may have known something before. Our Jason Colthorpe talked to a student who said that he had concerns for safety just based on rumors and rumblings around the school. But again, this is an ongoing investigation, but this is what the undersheriff believes. This is where he believes the investigation is right now.
We believe he acted alone. There's no other shooters. There's no other gunmen. We don't believe anybody at this point in time pending further investigation, that he planned this with anybody else. But we will be doing social media checks. We will be talking to all the students, as many as we can that were here today. That's why we have so many officers here and so many detectives here, so that everybody and anybody can be talked to that has any knowledge of him or what he was going to do, or after the fact.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is still ongoing, still a lot of work to be done. This is a community that is aching right now. And when there's a school shooting, then all communities ache, because this can happen absolutely anywhere. Again, we're talking about 3 students, young people, who are cut down in their prime, 6 people injured at various hospitals, including that teacher. And we don't know their condition yet. And so we don't know how serious those injuries are. This is a community in pain. The superintendent and the undersheriff are supposed to come back and talk to us again at 5. Understand they have a lot of work to do, so we can't hold them to that. But indeed, the superintendent is asking for everyone to give them support.
Certainly can pray for our families here in Oxford and our students. I'm learning information real time, just as you all are.
Can you talk to me about why you didn't have metal detectors?
No.
Okay.
That's my answer to your question, no.
Okay. Is that something that's ever come up?
Not that I can recall, no.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's something that a lot of school districts that don't have metal detectors are going to have to think about, because obviously they were prepared. They did the training, the ALICE training with students, where they learn active shooter protocols. They had this one way in and one way out when school was open. They had limited size backpacks. The only thing they didn't have were these metal detectors, and they didn't have bag checks. A lot going on, still a lot to unpack. Let me throw it back to you for now.
You bet, Paula. We will check in with you here shortly, no doubt, and certainly as we prepare for that next briefing, which will be coming along a little less than an hour from now. So this has been a stunning and awful couple of hours for all of the parents at Oxford High.
Yes, it definitely has. Parents were directed to a mire near the school where students were sent, hoping to reunite with their families as soon as possible. Our Jason Colthorpe is in that area and joins us. He's been talking with students and parents as well. Jason.
Karen, I'm actually across the street from the mire, and that's where some parents and students have now spilled over into an area where this is so fluid that they're just trying to find a place where they can get kids and their parents together in the right spot where they can meet. The mire is just almost a zoo now, with a heavy police presence, as you can imagine. But across in this place, I went walking around, came across several parents and students, many who couldn't even put into words what had just gone on, and they weren't even in the middle of it, but they were reunited. You could just see the relief on their faces, parents not letting their kids more than a couple feet out of their sight, out of their reach. And as I spoke to more parents, some didn't have kids at school that day, but as Paula said, a very small community here, and everybody touches everyone here, so everyone knows everyone, and so people are on the scene trying to support each other. And you have other parents that I came across just in a state of disbelief. Also others waiting to hear about loved ones, not their children, but other kids they know very well, just waiting to hear. And then we also have in this situation parents who are talking about the motivation here. And we really need to stress that this is very preliminary, because I've been talking to Mike McCabe, the undersheriff, many times throughout this process, even after he updated everyone. And we're talking about that threat that we talked about a little while ago. That was a Snapchat, but what they're looking at came from a student who saw this. It was a picture he took of someone else's Snapchat, but it was enough for him to not want to go to school today. He stayed home. Some of his friends stayed home, because that, coupled with some things that have happened in recent days and weeks, even going back a month, that police have not confirmed, but they say they're looking into everything, perceived threats, where it was enough where students just didn't feel comfortable today. And we spoke with that mother and her son, who's a senior and did not go to school today. And here's what they had to say.
But my son has a footage of them on social media saying what this person, whomever it was, what he said that he would do to these kids if they came to school, if he heard their voice, what he would do to them, that if you come to this school today, I'm going to kill you.
First thing, when I got up, I put my shoes on, put my coat on, I told my mom, come on, let's go. I have a friend, he's more like my cousin, I think of him as my cousin, and I said he's in there, he's the only one that went to school, and I need to get up there to get him out of that school, because I don't want anything to happen to him.
And he is okay?
Yeah, he is fine, he's at home, he's a little bit scared, but he'll be okay.
Yeah, they said when they got here to the school, deputies were everywhere, but some students who had been shot were coming out. He knew those students. It was just devastating to see them dealing with these injuries. His friend that he knew, his mother told me, I believe she said he was a member of the football team, but was able to, he ran all the way home before any of this and is safe. But again, the investigation now into exactly what were these threats. Are they connected to this 15-year-old sophomore who allegedly pulled the trigger today? The young man that police do have in custody. They don't know if that's the case yet. So we're working to learn more about that, as pretty much most parents who are looking for someone are being reunited with them as we speak. Karen?
I know you've been talking to a lot of parents, Jason, and it is hard to report on this in terms of threats and rumors. We don't want to add to anything if we don't have it, quote, proven or verified, but it does feel like this is a constant thing we have been hearing about this afternoon. Uneasiness, uncomfortable. Something may have happened a few weeks ago. Something might have happened last week. You know, the student you spoke with didn't feel like they were comfortable going to school. It just feels like there were a lot of at least red flags, something out there that had people worried.
Well, and I think you could pick up on that a little bit when the superintendent was talking to Paula. And this parent, I mean, I asked her point blank, do you think your son can go back to this school? She said, no, he's not coming back. She doesn't want him to come back, in person at least, given what has happened. And in a lengthier interview we had with her, she talked about a lot of different things that had been happening, writing on the walls, threats to certain students, violent threats. And in her mind and some students' minds, they hadn't been dealt with appropriately. But again, every school has issues like this, and we don't know the inner workings. We don't know if staff was dealing with this, but maybe students don't know what the action plan is yet. So it's unfair to maybe connect those dots, but it's certainly fair to say that some students were uneasy about things, and at least one parent does not want to send her student back here. Karen?
Most definitely. There's a lot there to unpack. All right, Jason, thank you very much.
I think you're exactly on the money. We don't want to jump to any conclusions, and yet it feels unwise to dismiss this kind of unease that not only one student had, but he talked about a number of them that didn't go to school today because what they've been hearing over these past couple of days. So obviously a lot still for us to learn. Our crews have fanned out all over the area in pursuit of those things.
Yes, right now Hank Winchester is at the hospital where some of the victims were taken. Hank, what can you tell us? What's the latest?
Karen, Devin, good afternoon to both of you. We do know at least one victim from the high school brought here to the hospital, McLaren in downtown Pontiac. This hospital location, one of the closest ERs to the high school in Oxford. Let me give you a live look behind me right now. You can see this is the main entrance to the emergency trauma part of the building here. You can also see hospital security out here, but it's what we saw earlier that really brings this investigation here into the hospital. Take a look at some video as we saw agents with the FBI and also a team from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department making their way inside the trauma unit. Why is that significant? Well, it's significant because, as you heard Under Sheriff McCabe say, investigators are going through this minute by minute, talking to witnesses not only in the building, in the high school, but now bringing the investigation here to Pontiac, where we know there is at least one victim from this school shooting. They are trying to find out from those who witnessed this event exactly what happened and why this all transpired. We also know here in Pontiac that the hospital itself is on lockdown. That lockdown situation is unfolding, obviously, because of the events in the high school itself and the victims from the high school that were brought here. If you yourself are here coming for a medical test, if you're trying to make your way in to visit a family member, you are being turned away. Right at the main entrance here of the hospital, across from the trauma building, there is a guard. And if you make your way inside, they're being told that right now visitors are not allowed in the hospital because of this ongoing situation. The hospital itself not providing us any information regarding the condition of the patient that was brought here. We know at least one, or any information as to whether other patients and those who were shot were brought here to downtown Pontiac. We did see ambulances being escorted by police cars about an hour and a half ago, making their way around the back, which is the main ER entrance. That makes sense. And then, of course, you know, the major development regarding the investigation itself. As we heard McCabe talking about the investigation within the high school, well, obviously the investigation has to fan out and impact those who are directly involved, the victims of this shooting. And that is why we saw a team from the FBI and now teams from the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, which arrived here about an hour ago. We see at least 2 SUV cruisers. We see another vehicle around back, and they are likely inside talking with those who witnessed this tragic event, trying to figure out exactly what happened. We're waiting to get more information. I'm sorry, just one moment. Take a live look behind me. You can see some members of the FBI and police, I believe this is gang task force, have made their way out of the building. That's the agent that we saw make his way in about an hour and a half ago. And you see that that the security here from the hospital making their way over across the street here. We've seen that happen throughout most of the afternoon. That is people who may be asking if they can make their way inside. Maybe they have a medical appointment or they want to visit a family member. They're being turned away. Jason, did the agent, is he out of sight now? Okay, so it looks like the agents who were here have now made their way over to their vehicles. But I mean, that's a significant development. That shows you that obviously law enforcement working to get direct information and information from those who were impacted by this horrible event in Oxford, and this hospital being the closest to the high school itself. Obviously, they wanted to make sure that these students and possibly the teacher who was impacted by the shooting were able to get that medical attention as quickly as possible. This location here in Pontiac, the closest to the high school itself. Devin and Karen, back to both of you.
You bet it, Hank. We'll let you get back to the scene there. Some patients were brought to another hospital, McLaren-Lapeer.
Yeah, Local 4's Priya Mann is there right now getting more information for us. Priya, what can you tell us?
Well, Karen, Devin, we are about 16 miles away from Oxford High School. We know that victims were taken to multiple area hospitals. Let me give you a live look right now at the entrance to the ambulance emergency entrance. I have seen police officers walking in and out. I have seen a police officer just moments ago talking to a paramedic. Hospital security has also been talking to folks before they walk into the hospital. Now, again, we are talking about 3 students who have been shot and killed. Another 6 were shot, including a teacher. This shooting unfolded within 5 minutes. Police received more than 100 911 calls. Again, we have been seeing police officers walking in and out of the doors here at McLaren-Lapeer Region Hospital. Again, that's about 16 miles away from Oxford High School. We know that multiple victims were taken to several area hospitals. And of course, we are expecting an update within about 40 minutes. And we will, of course, keep you posted if we see any families or loved ones who are making their way to the hospital. Reporting live from Lapeer, I'm Priya Mann. I'll send it back.
Yeah, all right, Priya. So we've seen hospitals had to respond pretty quickly here. We mentioned earlier 60 different units responded to the more than 100 911 calls which came in, which means that you had hospitals, the entire system was activating. Everybody was getting ready for whatever might happen.
Right, it's a true choreography, and you need to make sure that you bring the victims to the right trauma unit. You don't want to bring them to the hospital that may not have the services, and then you need to make sure that you are ready because you don't know if more victims are coming in. So we're going to bring in our own Local 4 Dr. Frank McGeorge to give us a little bit of perspective in terms of, you work in the emergency room, a call like this happens, Doc. What goes through your head and what do you do to prepare?
Well, Karen and Devin, one of the things is in many of the mass casualty shootings that I've been involved in, a lot of the pre-hospital notification is fairly sudden. That is, we don't have a lot of advance notice. But when we do, we activate mass casualty protocols. Now, the protocols can differ a little bit depending on the type of the event. So, for example, a chemical event is different than a shooting. But the goal is to mobilize resources to basically redirect non-emergent care from the emergency areas and prepare for incoming. And that means making operating rooms, intensive care units, blood bank, all kinds of areas in the hospital that are going to be needed beyond the emergency department, mobilized and aware that there is a serious incident in play. Now, bigger picture, ideally there would actually be incident command on site, that is at the school, that can do triage to the most appropriate facility. You kind of mentioned that. Some patients, for example, might need to be taken to the nearest available facility to be stabilized and then taken to their final destination. Others might actually require a higher level of resources immediately, and a helicopter, for example, might need to be deployed and they may need to be taken to a higher level trauma center. But it all varies. Big picture, though, the emergency departments in all of these hospitals are going to be overwhelmed, if anything, by family members and by the public that are seeking to find out more information, to look for